Hi guys, this is part 2 of the intake manifold and EGR cleaning video, and in this video I'm going to assemble everything back. So as you can see, now I need to install the intake manifold back, and I use ceramic grease for intake manifold bolts. It is okay to use ceramic grease with aluminum and steel, do not use copper grease here. So as you can see, the intake manifold is installed. You see the new gasket. Hope it's visible, yeah. So you see the new gasket and holes for the glow plugs. I cleaned them and they are not perfectly clean, but I believe it is okay. So be careful, and you will need to torque all the bolts up to spec. So especially be careful with the glow plugs, just because it's very easy to damage them. And now I'm going to test the glow plugs. So as you can see, this is how I test them. All of them are good. So, and also I'm going to clean all of them. The most important thing here is threads, so make sure that there is no sand or big dust or something like that. I tried to use compressed air for personal computers, but honestly it doesn't work here. So just take some wipe, and make sure that they're clean. And be very careful with the torque here. So now you see on the screen torque for glow plugs, and use the torque range. Be super careful. As well as with the intake manifold bolts as well, just because it's very easy to damage the thread in aluminum, engine head. So be careful here and use the torque range. So as you can see, I installed the plugs. I screwed bolts for intake manifold, and I used this small torque range. Okay, so I installed the common royal fluid. As you can see, 2 nuts here and there, and also the pipes. So pipes now are connected to the injectors. So well, the next step actually is to install the return hose to the common rail fluid. And by the way, be careful everywhere here and do not put any dust and stuff to the fuel lines. So this is the EGR valve after cleaning. To me it looks good. I don't think it makes sense to clean it even more, so I'm going to test it like this. So I put some carburetor cleaner inside of the valve, and I believe if it doesn't go here, if you don't see it here, it means that the EGR valve is properly closed, and it is definitely enough to keep the exhaust gas. So this is the place on the engine block, 3 bolts, where the EGR valve is placed. So I'm going to install it there, and I use ceramic grease, by the way, as I said, for the bolts. So this is how it looks like. So the EGR valve is installed, and yeah, this is how it looks like. The lower bolt is also installed. So do not forget about this one. It keeps the coolant pipes. And another tricky bolt here. It's hard to find it, but you see it, yeah, right here. So it should be also screwed. And this one and that one, this is for the vacuum pipe to the EGR bypass, EGR cooler. Actually, there is a bypass valve. So okay, the next step is to install the EGR cooler. As you can see, the EGR cooler now is in place. So I'm going to screw those nuts, as well as install the coolant pipes. And this pipe is very tricky. So this is the input pipe, actually hose, sorry. This is the input hose, and it's very tricky to install it there, and even trickier to install the clamp, but it is possible. Okay, so I put all the nuts, and do not forget about ceramic grease. So as you can see, the clamp is there, and another clamp of that tricky hose. So as you can see, it's also there. So as I said, it is possible. And do not forget about this bolt there. Yeah, this one, it holds the EGR cooler. Okay, so I also installed the vacuum pipe, actually hose, to the EGR bypass, so it controls it. So it should be installed here. And this is the bypass, this is how it works. You can move it. You could put some grease there, like lithium grease or something like this. And this is the place for the throttle valve. So as you can see, now the throttle valve is installed. One bolt here, not here, and another nut there. So also do not forget about coolant pipes here and here. And after the throttle valve is installed, it is possible to install the main fuel pipe. So as you can see, now it looks like this. So the next step is to install the glow plug wirings. So as you can see, this metal thing which connects all the glow plugs, and the wiring is here. So I installed it too. And this is the place for the coolant pipe. This is the coolant pipe. This is the T, which connects to the radiator and also to the small circle. So again, this is the alternator upper bolt. So the alternator should be moved in order to install this. So I cleaned it. As you can see, there is some corrosion, but it is still okay and still alive, and I think I see some rust inside, which is also okay. I didn't unmount the coolant sensor from here. I don't think it's needed, it works perfectly, so I just simply cleaned it. This is the old gasket. Unfortunately, I don't have a new one, so I'm going to reuse this one. I don't think that it is problematic. I think it will work perfectly. And those are clamps for hoses. So as you can see, the alternator is kinda moved to the front of the car, and two bolts, actually two nuts, and the T is installed now. So, and as well as intake pipe. Do not forget about bolts for the intake pipe. There are 3 bolts of this one and another 2 bolts. I also installed clamps for the coolant hoses, and screwed some bolts there. Do not forget about all those bolts. Also I installed the clamps for the intake hoses, and this is the wiring. So this is the big harness, so I also screwed it to the intake pipe. And do not forget about all those wires to the throttle valve, to the EGR valve, basically everywhere, to the glow plugs. This is the map sensor, this is the common rail stuff. Do not forget about all that things. It is very important to install it properly. And by the way, if you damage some plastic holder for the wires, no worries about that, and it happens from time to time. So also I installed all the other bolts, small bolts, and seems like now I'm pretty much ready to start the car. Actually, I'm not ready, just because I need to replace the antifreeze, the coolant, so I need to drain the remaining coolant and put a new one. Okay, so I did that, and also I installed the battery, and this is the MAF sensor wires. I'm not going to connect the MAF sensor, as well as I'm not going to install the air filter, as well as this EGR pipe. I'm also not going to install it. I'm just going to run the engine like this and see if it starts. So okay, so in order to bleed your fuel lines, you need to unscrew the fuel line nut, then crank the engine a bit, and then screw it back once you see the fuel, you know. If fuel goes there, you're probably okay. So do it for all the nuts and try it again. Okay, now we see some fuel here, and it means that we can screw the nuts back and try to crank the engine again. So the next thing is to install the EGR pipe. I also cleaned it. I cleaned the surface a bit and it looks kind of okay. So do not forget about the gaskets, by the way, and the pipe is installed. And also I installed the engine cover back, and do not forget about some miscellaneous stuff like battery holder and stuff like that. So also after all of this I reset EGR. Basically I did EGR initialization again, and also I reset the MAF sensor adaptation. And now the car is performing injectors calibration. This is a pretty interesting process, and as part of this process, so as you can see now, it is in progress. And as part of this process, the engine increases RPM, decreases RPM, so it is doing something, and all that time the glow plug is on, as you can see. And when the glow plug flashes 5 times, it means that the procedure is completed. And as a final step, I also applied liquid moly diesel engine intake manifold cleaner. So what you need to do, you need to apply it, and the engine should have 2k RPM. I configured it using ForceScan, and basically it is possible. And after that I applied it. I used 2 bottles of this cleaner. I think it's enough. It's a final step, you know, kind of final polishing of all this process. And basically, I'm done. Thank you for watching, guys.